Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Adriana, what kind of beast is she? Where has she been forever? Lamented Betty over and over throughout the day, trying to find little Adriana, her favorite orphanage. The orphanage was in a very picturesque place on the border of two regions. The children there were few in number, and all lived as one and friendly family. The oldest tutor of the orphanage did not have any children of her own and gave all her love and warmth to the children who had been left without parental care. Many of the children had families where they were not loved or waited on. Adriana was different from other children. Her parents were refugees from a former Soviet republic. They did not have their own place, and they wandered around in mixed-use places. They were reluctant to take a job without a residence permit. There was a catastrophic shortage of money even for the bare necessities. Tired of his miserable existence, my father began to drink heavily. No, he did not bully, did not swear, just got drunk, and went to work the next day gloomy and silent. One day he did not come home at all. While working as a bricklayer on a construction site, he fell from a height and died. What was wrong with Adriana's mother then? She couldn't imagine living with a child on her salary while renting a place to live. When they were kicked out of their apartment for non-payment, she simply went to the guardianship office and gave her daughter to an orphanage, promising that when she received her citizenship and got a decent job, she would take the baby back. She asked me very much not to deprive her of her parental rights. She loved her daughter. At first, she often visited the baby and even brought her sweets and toys. This went on for about 2 years. Adriana is mine. I am an American citizen, and now I can work in my profession. Just be patient a little longer and get a job. Good economists are always needed. It's not like washing dishes in a cafe. It's a different income, she reassured the girl the last time we met. And then a terrible thing happened. Adriana had noticed since the evening that Betty was looking at her strangely during Adriana's dinner. It even seemed that her eyes filled with tears, and she was ready to burst into tears. "Mom, Betty, are you having grief?" the girl asked her favorite teacher after dinner. "Oh no, honey. There's no grief. It's just a little pea in my eye, and I cannot get out." The woman lied to her teacher and even smiled a little. "Mama, Betty, you haven't forgotten that tomorrow is my birthday. Tomorrow my mother will come and bring me a big cake. She promised me." Suddenly, Betty took off from her seat and ran down the long blue hallway, stomping loudly with the heels of her new shoes. "Whatever you want, Kathy, but tell her yourself I can't. She's expecting her mother tomorrow." "Yes, I can't be near her without crying," whispered Betty so no one would hear. "Principal Betty, you are an educator first and foremost, and pull yourself together," strictly replied stern-looking woman. "Let's wait a couple of days. If not on her birthday, at least," the teacher pleaded with the tips of her white lab coat, wiping away her tears. "And how do you imagine it? The girl is not 5 years old. It was a couple of years ago we lied that her mother didn't come to her birthday party because she was sick, or they wouldn't let her out of work. And now there's cell phone service and parents call their kids on the public phone. So tomorrow, she'll be sitting by the phone all day waiting for her mom to call. Mom won't come and call. What are you going to tell her?" "All right, not tomorrow, maybe a day later, but we have to do it." "Well, she's not dead after all," the principal said loudly. And just now she saw a little girl in the doorway, holding her favorite teddy bear. "My mother isn't coming for my birthday. She's sick." Quietly, the little girl asked even tighter, clutching the old teddy bear to her chest. "Come on, honey. I'll explain everything to you. You are a big girl, and you can understand me," Betty said, taking Adriana's hand and trying to leave the orphanage director's office as quickly as possible. They walked in silence, down an endlessly long corridor. There seemed to be no end to this narrow tunnel, painted dark green. When they reached the teacher's room, Betty pushed open a heavy old door and invited her in. "Let's talk in here. No one will disturb us." The older nurse suggested and sat Adriana down on the old leather sofa and moved the table to it. She looked long and intently into the girl's eyes. You know, little girl, there are situations in life when a person cannot decide for himself what and who is dear to him. He thinks he is doing the right thing, but in fact, it is a big and unforgivable mistake. Don't you judge your mother right away. It may be hard for you to accept what I tell you now, but in time you will understand and accept her decision. The fact is that your mom got married and went to another country, not because she wanted to leave you, but because it was very hard for her to be alone all this time. And now she is with a kind, decent, and wealthy man who helps her in everything, with whom she feels protected. She didn't leave you. In fact, she wants to settle down in a new place, and then you will go to her too. It's the right thing to do. You didn't resent your mother. It was hard for the girl to take it all at once. There was horror in her eyes. She did not even cry, just sat, staring at one point with an absent look, holding her teddy bear, which could protect her from the cruel and unfair world. She won't come anymore, the girl said quietly. She will have another daughter, and I am nobody's daughter now. I am an orphan. She looked at the teacher in a mature way and added, Don't leave me. Betty, at least don't leave me. The older teacher had worked at the orphanage for almost 20 years and had seen a lot, but she had never seen such a mature and thoughtful look in the eyes of a very young girl. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She pressed her little light head to her chest and said, I'll never leave you. You're my firefly. And now let's go into town and pick out the most beautiful cake for you. It's your birthday tomorrow. Let's not think about the bad things. Let's go. The girl put her little hand in the teacher's hand and confidently walked beside her. 11 years of school flew by quickly. From a little girl with blonde and slightly prominent hair, Adriana has turned into a pleasant, young person with a mop of thick dark hair, with regular facial features and a beautiful figure. The only one prettier than her at graduation was Christina, a girl from a family of military doctors and whose parents had died as a result of their professional activities. The girls had been friends since childhood and helped each other. Dark hair, brown eyes. Christina had a tough temper and often stood up for her friend if she was hurt. That was all. Soon we will be thrown out of this orphanage into a big, cruel world of which we know almost nothing. Christina shared her fears with her friend. Why is it cruel? What if there is a merry, carefree life outside the gates of the orphanage, where there are no restrictions, admonitions, teachings, or other unpleasantness? Adriana assumed and thought about it. We shall see, Christina replied thoughtfully. She knew that beyond the gates of the orphanage they were in for the unknown. Christina was placed in an orphanage. 12 years old, she was a sad and withdrawn girl. She still could not understand or forgive the many relatives who could not or would not take her in. It was a terrible ordeal for her. The death of her parents, the loss of all ties to the outside world, from which she was simply cut off. Her grandmother, a tough and principled lady, thought that the state would raise her granddaughter better than she would. She was not initially happy about her only son's marriage to a girl outside their circle. She did not love her granddaughter. She just tolerated her. The girl was like her mother, and her grandmother stipulated a couple of times that she was incapable of truly loving a half-plebeian, even though she was her granddaughter. They walked in silence, down an endlessly long corridor. There seemed to be no end to this narrow tunnel, painted dark green. When they reached the teacher's room, Betty pushed open a heavy old door and invited her in. Let's talk in here. No one will disturb us. The older nurse suggested and sat Adriana down on the old leather sofa and moved the table to it. She looked long and intently into the girl's eyes. You know, little girl, there are situations in life when a person cannot decide for himself what and who is dear to him. He thinks he is doing the right thing, but in fact, it is a big and unforgivable mistake. Don't you judge your mother right away. It may be hard for you to accept what I tell you now, but in time you will understand and accept her decision. The fact is that your mom got married and went to another country, not because she wanted to leave you, but because it was very hard for her to be alone all this time. And now she is with a kind, decent, and wealthy man who helps her in everything, with whom she feels protected. She didn't leave you, in fact. She wants to settle down in a new place, and then you will go to her too. It's the right thing to do. You didn't resent your mother. It was hard for the girl to take it all at once. There was horror in her eyes. She did not even cry, just sat, staring at one point with an absent look, holding her teddy bear, which could protect her from the cruel and unfair world. She won't come anymore, the girl said quietly. She will have another daughter, and I am nobody's daughter now. I am an orphan. She looked at the teacher in a mature way and added, "Don't leave me. Betty, at least don't leave me." The older teacher had worked at the orphanage for almost 20 years and had seen a lot, but she had never seen such a mature and thoughtful look in the eyes of a very young girl. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She pressed her little light head to her chest and said, "I'll never leave you. You're my firefly. And now let's go into town and pick out the most beautiful cake for you. It's your birthday tomorrow. Let's not think about the bad things. Let's go." The girl put her little hand in the teacher's hand and confidently walked beside her. 11 years of school flew by quickly. From a little girl with blonde and slightly prominent hair, Adriana has turned into a pleasant young person with a mop of thick dark hair, with regular facial features and a beautiful figure. The only one prettier than her at graduation was Christina, a girl from a family of military doctors and whose parents had died as a result of their professional activities. The girls had been friends since childhood and helped each other. Dark hair, brown eyes. Christina had a tough temper and often stood up for her friend if she was hurt. That was all. Soon we will be thrown out of this orphanage into a big, cruel world of which we know almost nothing. Christina shared her fears with her friend. Why is it cruel? What if there is a merry, carefree life outside the gates of the orphanage, where there are no restrictions, admonitions, teachings, or other unpleasantness? Adriana assumed and thought about it. "We shall see," Christina replied thoughtfully. She knew that beyond the gates of the orphanage they were in for the unknown. Christina was placed in an orphanage. 12 years old, she was a sad and withdrawn girl. She still could not understand or forgive the many relatives who could not or would not take her in. It was a terrible ordeal for her. The death of her parents, the loss of all ties to the outside world, from which she was simply cut off. Her grandmother, a tough and principled lady, thought that the state would raise her granddaughter better than she would. She was not initially happy about her only son's marriage to a girl outside their circle. She did not love her granddaughter. She just tolerated her. The girl was like her mother, and her grandmother stipulated a couple of times that she was incapable of truly loving a half-plebeian, even though she was her granddaughter. My mother's side of the family was of a very different class. They lived in the countryside far away in Siberia. My grandmother was dead, and my grandfather and aunt didn't dare take in a girl from the big city. They were ashamed of their simplicity, and Christina wasn't eager to go to that dark corner. As her arrogant capital grandmother had said, Adriana, her first and most devoted shelter friend. They had just hit it off. They had sat at the same desk at school for 5 years, shared a room, and only their interests were different. Christina liked quiet leisure time. She read a lot, embroidered or made origami out of paper for the printer. Adriana was more active and liked to play sports. She was a champion orphanage runner and skier. After her parents, she was left with an apartment almost in the center, some kind of relatives. Although with those it was better not to have any. Adriana reasoned, knowing in advance that at best she would end up in a dormitory at some factory or college, a pauper's life, and an eternal reminder of her orphan past. You too are entitled to an apartment by law. Christina wanted to cheer up her friend. Oh, don't be ridiculous. Well, I'll get some doghouse in 3 years. And before that, nowhere. I won't get into university. You know that, don't you? Studying isn't my thing. You can't get a good job without an education. If you get any education, then what to live on while you study? Hopelessly, replied Adriana, and her huge gray-blue eyes reflected such sadness and hopelessness that Christina wanted to hug her and say something very warm and so promising. Wait, we can stay at my apartment temporarily. We did not have a huge apartment, like my grandmother's, but it was a decent apartment with a living room and 2 bedrooms. God, why didn't I think of that right away? We'll live together, and we will not be afraid of problems, laughed and jumped Christina, hugging her favorite girlfriend. That would be great. Somehow not believing her luck, Adriana said, well, things can't be all bad for me. My father is dead. My mother has completely forgotten about me. At first, she still wrote from her Canada, even promising to pick me up soon. And now she has 2 more children, a new life. And the last letter I received 3 years ago, where she explicitly made it clear that I have to somehow make my own way in this life. Christina, that's what's wrong with me. If even my own mother gave me up for a life of ease and comfort, I swear to you, no matter what happens to me, no matter what trials fall on my shoulders, I will never leave my children with tears in my eyes. Adriana finished her fiery speech and burst into tears. Grandmother Christina Kelly met her granddaughter coldly and did not even offer to go to the apartment and said that her parents' apartment is still occupied. And the lease expires in 2 weeks. And where should we live for 2 weeks? Christina was indignant at her grandmother's message to us. And who else do you want to live in the family nest? Do not forget that you're only registered there and have no rights to this apartment. I'm the owner, so forget it temporarily. You can stay with my au pair for now. She's renting out a room. Don't worry about it. I'll pay for the room. The harsh lady said in a tone that could not be objected to, and put a note in her granddaughter's hand with the address of the filming house and the landlady's phone number. Yeah, that's what she said. Don't worry, Adriana. We'll get through this. We're orphans, and that's not a status. It's a way of life. Cheerfully said Christina and began to dial the number of the owner of the apartment. Good afternoon. I'm Kelly's granddaughter. She told me that I would stay at your place until my parents' apartment is vacant. Politely stated the matter. The girl. Yes. The girls headed to the apartment address, not even expecting the landlady to welcome them both with open arms. If she says she can only accommodate me, then I slam the door and leave. At the very least, we'll live in a hostel somewhere, Christina said confidently. The door to the apartment was opened by an older, very pleasant woman. I thought she was just talking about one girl. Well, that's okay. There's a couch and a bed in the room. There's plenty of room for everybody. Very affectionately and sincerely said the woman and led the girls into the room. The room was small, but very comfortable. The white wallpaper and small flowers made the room look bigger. A large velour sofa was covered with a soft, furry plaid, and on it sat a huge white bear cub, resembling a duck from the cartoon of the same name. The round antique table had one powerful leg that extended out to 4 sides, like the huge paw of a fearsome beast. It was covered with a plush, purple, fringed tablecloth. In the center stood a beautiful vase of wildflowers. Do you like it? The pretty woman asked with a smile. Yes, it's very simple and tasteful at the same time. And what is your name? Christina asked. Oh, sorry, I haven't introduced myself. Kalaga, can you just call me Kalaga? And why are you 2? Kelly did not mention a second guest, asked the hostess, adjusting the folds on the furry plaid. Oh, Sarah, don't tell grandmother I'm not alone. This is my friend from the orphanage. She has nowhere else to go. You know how hard it is to get an apartment now, even if you are legally entitled to one. Even to find a room in the dormitory, you either have to go to school or get a job. Well, she can't live at the train station. With a pleading tone, said Christina. Of course I won't. I'll put the kettle on now. And we'll have tea with homemade cookies and plum jam. There were so many plums this year. I have an orchard outside of town. I'm retired now, and I help Kelly around the house twice a week, and then I go to the garden. "So I'll be even calmer if you look behind the house motherly warm," said Slaga, and went into the kitchen to put the kettle on. On the first day of their stay, the kind woman called Betty to find out how the girls were settling in Christina's apartment. Upon learning of their misfortunes, the educator immediately promised to use all her connections to help Adriana find a job and at least some accommodation. "My dear, you must understand me correctly. My grandmother will not let you live together in Christina's apartment. If it is her property, if she was hostile to even her own granddaughter, let alone a stranger to her," crushed Betty, and was right in her fears. By the end of the second week of the girls' stay with the kind hostess, Kelly called and in a commanding voice ordered her granddaughter to move into the vacated apartment. And then she added that she would not tolerate any unemployed orphans in her apartment. "Baby, you live at my place. I will not charge you. And you just water the flowers and feed Mauricia." While I was at the cottage Adriana offered while Christina was packing her things for the move, Slaga went to work and then went straight home to the cottage and came back on the eve of the work shift. Adriana felt lonely and sad to be alone all the time in an empty apartment where she was the only living creature. The old cat Mauricia. 3 days after Christina left, Betty called on the line and told her in a happy voice that she had found her a great job in a cafe as a waitress. "Baby," the director of the cafe, "is a former pupil of ours. She is wonderful, and I am sure that you will become friends. But you have to work honestly and conscientiously, so I do not blush for you." Playfully strict, said kindergarten teacher, and sent the address of the cafe and the name of the owner. On the first day of work, Adriana was terribly nervously fiddling with her fingers and the edge of her white apron. She appeared before the full and smiling hostess of the establishment. Lisa introduced herself loudly and cheerfully and held out her hand to greet her. "Adriana," shyly, the girl replied, and lightly squeezed the chubby hand of her boss. "Don't be afraid of anything. Don't be afraid of anyone. We have a decent crowd. No fights or accidents. Only accidentally spilled coffee on the tablecloth for a client. That second should be avoided as a lesson," Lisa answered and merrily walked to the center of the hall, where at the bar counter nice barman John was placing a new batch of beautiful bottles of alcohol. "John, you're in charge of the new girl. Not to scold, not to interfere, but to help," the woman said with gusto and disappeared behind the door to the staff room. The first week, Adriana was terribly tired. Many by the end of the shift refused to listen to her. There were more and more customers every day. The cafe was not far from the city beach, and beach season was in full swing. "Well, Adriana, you have been working for us for 6 months now, and I can only say one thing. You are a wonderful person and irreplaceable employee. And on your birthday, you are in for a surprise." On a solemn note, finished her greeting the owner of the Kingdom of Cocktails and Great Coffee. "Lisa, you intrigue me. What kind of surprise?" Adriana asked excitedly, who already for the first time in her life received so many gifts and sincere congratulations on her birthday. "I have no right to divulge the secret. Now Betty's mother will come, and you will find out," jolly announced Lisa. She kept looking out the window and at the clock. And here I came into the banquet hall, and a favorite educator, Adriana and Lisa. The elderly woman was simply glowing from within. So much warmth and love she had for her former foster children. "My dear girls, what a beautiful day today, though it rained outside, Adriana. Happy birthday to you. I was in such a hurry to finish all the formalities for this day, and I did it. I don't know how to tell you to go look at your new apartment tomorrow. I wrote to all the authorities and Lisa helped me. Well, you can't be so ungodly it's coming out of the shelter to nowhere. So your first home is reclaimed. And if you want to improve or expand it, it's your efforts and hard work." At the end of her simple but so warm speech, Mama Betty cried, "Mama Betty, you're a magician. You are my good fairy godmother. You are a unique person." Adriana hugged her beloved teacher and cried with her, "Well, that's it. You've made a swamp here. We should have fun. And you seem to have buried." "Who?" Lisa to the bartender and the first to start dancing, chasing with her slender hands the apartment she had picked out for her ward. Betty was not particularly comfortable and convenient location, a bedroom community, a standard one-bedroom with balconies, tiny kitchen. But for Adriana, it was a mansion, accustomed for years to live with roommates in the orphanage and the landlady in the apartment. She was happy with any accommodation, even in a semi-basement. And here is the second floor of a brick 5-story building. Near a square, a playground and a polyclinic of no more than half an hour by streetcar or bus. Even the old furniture, a big creaking sofa, a slightly hunched over armchair, a desk, and an antique bookcase remained in the apartment from the previous owners. The apartment was clean. No urgent or major repairs were required. So there you were, living happily ever after. Betty rejoiced as she looked around her new home with her child. "Mama, Betty, you are closer to my mother now, both territorially and mentally. She does not call or write at all." The caregiver asked worriedly and lowered her head, as if this was her indirect fault. "Have you hugged your ward?" "No," as if I wasn't there at all. At first I tried to make some sort of relationship. I called, but there was always a man who answered the phone and said something in English that sounded like no one was home. What can I say? Maybe something happened to my mom, and they wouldn't tell me. Or maybe I just became unnecessary, uncomfortable memories from my past life. Thoughtfully reasoned the girl. "Do not think about it. Just live and enjoy yourself," advised the kind woman, and walked out of the apartment. "Young lady, yes, that's exactly what I'm calling you. What do you mean it's not your table? And I want my table." And it was from your hands, and from no one else's, more cheerfully called the waitress, a man in his 30s in a badly ironed fancy shirt. He came to the cafe often and sat down at the same table, always to drink his strong coffee without cream or sugar. That table was served by a different waitress, but it was always Adriana he called, and he did it in such a fun, flirtatious, and in an intriguing way that the other waitress, upon seeing him, would say, "Adriana, your client showed up, put on lipstick, fix a curl, and gait from the hip. Forward march." Their platonic relationship was already joked about by the whole staff of the restaurant and some of the regulars. If Adriana was serving one of the regulars, they warned with a certain amount of irony, "Here comes your customer. Run, sweetheart, or else he will again devour you with glances and shout at the entire room," trying to draw your attention to a young girl a little strained by this attention. But Michael was the name of a persistent customer. There was always a new joke in store, a little present for your favorite waitress, and a generous tip. With time, it turned into a kind of romantic game, where Adriana and Michael were the main characters, and their daily sparring became a thing of the place, receiving a tip equal in value to a good dinner each time. Adriana said you were spoiling me, and she would leave with the uncomfortable feeling that she was stealing from her regular customer. Several times Michael offered Adriana a walk, a movie, or dinner, but the girl politely declined, citing fatigue or business. The other waitresses often made fun of them. John, the bartender in love with Adriana, was terribly jealous with a scowl on his face. When Michael next visited their establishment, "Why don't you pay attention to this young man?" In a friendly way, the owner of the cafe, Lisa, advised him. "You didn't notice that he's a good 10 years older than me, at least, and probably married, and has kids. Didn't notice the baby seat in the back of his car. I noticed it right away. Typical womanizer who's tired of family life and wants to try his hand at being a Casanova. But he's got the wrong girl. I do not go out with married men, and even with old ones," cheerfully answered the girl. Time passed, and all attempts to get better acquainted, and perhaps even to make friends with the intractable waitress, ended in complete rejection and subsequent disappointment for Michael. On New Year's Eve, on her way home, very late after another corporate party, Adriana saw a merry, tipsy group of young people in the square near her home, who pestered the rare passersby, laughing loudly, often using foul language. The girl decided to walk down the far sidewalk so as not to provoke the young people into inappropriate actions. Before she reached the house, she was literally 100 meters away. Behind her, she heard quick footsteps and a drunken shout. "Madame, why are you so late? And alone? And what about us? We too want women's attention and a little love and affection. Let's have a drink together. Let's get acquainted, have a chat." The voice was so unpleasant that Adriana shuddered and sped up her steps. It didn't help. The whole company just ran after her and caught up with her on the playground between the clinic and her house. The dim light bulbs under the canopy of the porches did not allow the young people to see, much less figure out their plans. "Guys, I'm very tired and sleepy. I had a busy day, and I wasn't up to having fun." The girl tried to explain to the tipsy crowd, but it only increased their ardor. One of the guys lightly embraced Adriana and tried to pour liquids into her mouth from a drunken bottle of liquor. Suddenly, out of the darkness of the square, a stranger in a hooded jacket on the heads of two particularly active scoundrels swooped down on the drunken company, the one holding Adriana and the one shouting a vulgar suggestion. The stranger fell to the ground with a single blow. The third wasn't so easy, but he too fell to the snow from a kick to the groin. Two more first retreated, but abruptly changed their minds and regrouped. They attacked the stranger from behind. "Adriana, run." All the defender had time to shout before he received a powerful blow to the back in the kidney area from one of the earlier fleeing ones. He immediately sat down, and the whole crowd rushed at him to tear him down, destroy him, trample him. Adriana, running a few paces away, began calling for help. She wanted to call the police, but she must have dropped her phone. "Are there people at the scene of the scuffle? Help!" the girl screamed, and the lights even went on in some of the windows, but no one dared come out to help. Somewhere very close we could hear the siren, but it was unclear whether it was the ambulance or the fire department. The attackers, hearing it, moved away from the man and ran at a scattered pace. "My God, what have they done to you? You are dead to the world." Adriana, who had run toward her protector, wailed. The man's face was drenched with blood. It was impossible to tell the man's age, much less see his appearance. "I just dropped my phone somewhere. We need to call an ambulance and the police." Adriana shouted and dug around in the snow with her hands, hoping to find the missing phone. "I don't need anything. I'm fine. I've been stomped on harder than that." The man's voice sounded vaguely familiar, and not just from her feet. "Michael, it's you. How could you be here at this hour?" She tried to lift her admirer, but she was perplexed. Was he expecting you? A feeling of uneasiness came over her, as if something terrible were about to happen. But with whom? "Mine all stayed at home. Only you were confused and unclear." Michael explained his stay at Adriana's house. "Jesus, but you have a phone. Let's use yours to call an ambulance and the police. How I didn't think of that right away." Adriana scolded herself for being smart and slow. For a brave soldier to call an ambulance and the police for a broken nose. "Don't make me laugh. Better shake me off the snow and wish me well. Good night. You may kiss me, though. I chased the bullies away from you, and I deserve a reward." Already laughing, Michael offered, "I am truly grateful to you. I don't know what would happen to me if you weren't there," Adriana replied, with a look of gratitude. "And anyway, what are we standing here for? Let's go to my place, I beg of you, and lube up the wounds and abrasions. Clean your clothes. I don't need anything. I have a car. I'm just 2 blocks away, and I'm home without bothering to say no," Michael answered. He was about to walk when he was waved to the side, and he almost fell on the bench, which was near the children's sandbox. "All right, enough heroics. Hold on to me. And if you don't want an ambulance, let's go to my place and decide what to do," strictly declared Adriana and led her angel savior to the door of her entryway. "Take off your shirt, and I'll wash your pants," ordered Adriana, handing her guest her bathrobe and bathtub there. "I'll treat you later," The wounds on your face and hands. Michael came out of the tub a few minutes later. The face and hands had suffered considerably in the fight. There was an impressive bump on the back of his head with several abrasions. Lift your chin and cover your eye. I'll treat the eyelid and the eyebrow. Adriana gave her orders like a real soldier or superior. It was time for her hands as well. The knuckles of her right hand were bruised. A laceration on her wrist, a huge bruise on her chest and shoulder didn't hurt. At last the girl asked, not in a commanding tone, but in a softer one. I'm used to it. I was always treated by someone from time to time. When I was a kid, my grandparents would smash my knees in blood or fight with the neighborhood kids. When I was young, the old doctor at the cadet school where my elders sent me so I wouldn't go downhill, my mother never took care of me. I never knew my father's name from her. I don't judge her confused. My grandparents brought me up, and my mom and I lived together after cadet school. Then the 2nd Chechen Army wounded me and I got discharged, and I'm not missing anywhere. So pour on the hydrogen peroxide. Don't be shy. What's that old scar on your left wrist? It's a battle scar. Or is it from your childhood? Adriana asked, putting the vials and bottles back in the medicine cabinet. No, me and my friend stupidly made it back in the army. He was the first to be discharged, and we were thick as thieves when we served in the same plant. He was from Arkhangelsk. We made identical incisions on our hands as a sign of eternal friendship. I wrote to his address and the letters came back. Maybe he wrote me too, but I went to live with my mom. My grandparents died in the country. I don't do much good without them. I go to my grave with my mom. So we went our separate ways. I tried to look for him, but his last name is as common as Ithan's. There's 100,000 of them around the country. He gave up. And then, after I was rehabilitated, I went to fire school. I always lacked danger in life. Sergei was just as risky and outrageously brave. Michael finished his autobiographical story and looked at his watch. Soon it will be midnight. You probably want to sleep while I am here with my illnesses and stories. The man said concernedly, don't you want to? They must be looking for you at home by now. I washed my pants and shirt, but I have nothing to change you into. Adriana was worried, afraid Michael's wife would make a scene. But it was very strange that no one called him and wondered where he was at this late hour. I get it. You think they're looking for me already. Nobody's looking for me. I haven't told you everything. After the army, my mother and I didn't live very well. Mom couldn't see well and couldn't work. She was injured at work. While I was in the army, our neighbor Molly looked after her. She was just a girl when I left for the army. She promised me to visit my mother and help her. After my enlistment, I signed a contract. Then the war. Anyway, I didn't go away for a year, as I promised. When Molly came, I didn't recognize her. She was such a nice girl. I was wounded, and she helped me. Anyway, we fell in love. While I was in fireman's school, my mother was so happy. There was no wedding, so we got married. Molly was pregnant by then, and later found out she was having twins. I don't know how some fathers refuse to have children. They send their girlfriends to have an abortion. I couldn't be happier. I wasn't walking, I was flying. Then I started working in the fire department, and the pay was good. So we had our boys, William and Liam, who were funny and exactly alike. Only Molly could tell the difference. We lived in friendship, never quarreled. My mom sold my grandparents' house and bought us a one-room apartment. And then I, as a combatant and wounded man, was also given a one-room flat in the suburbs. We sold both apartments and bought a nice two-room flat. I became a head of the guard. The salary is not bad. Molly nursed and worked as a masseuse when the boys grew up, but we wanted a girl so much. Pregnancy didn't go right away. Doctor said that it happens this way, that it is normal with such an age. At what age she was not 30. Difficult childbirth, patience. Only the little one survived. She's 3 now. She's funny. Her brothers adore her. They're 7. Now you know everything. Michael finished his speech and put his head down on his chest, as if what had happened was his fault. He was the only one to blame. Where are the children now? Who are they with? You didn't leave them at home alone. Whoa. I look like a bad father. I look like a slacker or a drunk. I don't even smoke because you look at these fires because of drinkers and smokers. Then it's not the grief and smoke that hurts, it's what you see. The children are with their grandmothers. They are neighbors of my mom and Molly's mom. That's why Molly was helping my mom. Now the boys' New Year's vacations have started. The girl wouldn't go a step without them. I had to hang all 3 of them on my grandmothers. And they're glad. So nobody's looking for me today. No one needs me, Michael concluded. He ate the cookies and tea served by Adriana. Then you lie on the couch in the room, and I'm on the cot in the kitchen. And no arguments. You're a guest. And your cot won't hold up early in the morning when the guest is still asleep. Adriana, having quickly assembled her temporary bed, ironed his things, and made breakfast. Wow, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm late for work, Michael exclaimed, and got ready in a hurry. Michael, I won't let you go without breakfast. And it's already ready, Adriana warned him, and put a plate full of cheesecakes with sour cream on the table. Yes, I wouldn't leave without breakfast myself, the man cheerfully declared and put a cheesecake in his mouth, generously dipping it in the sour cream at about 8 o'clock with containers of cheesecakes. Michael ran out the door and jumped up and down the stairs and over the 2 floors in seconds. Michael, where did you sleep tonight? You came to work in a shirt pressed to the point of obscenity, and with dinner, slyly asked the dispatcher Nancy, who had long had her eye on the chief of guard. I do not know where you Nancy spent the night, and I have the right to the woman I love. I do not owe anyone anything. And she cooks, unlike you, much more decently. You want a cheesecake, you're gonna have to be rude to Michael. I do not want an admirer with a grudge in his voice, refused Nancy, and went to her workplace. The romance between Adriana and Michael began quickly and unexpectedly. Together, they celebrated the new year at the cottage of Michael's friends. Then together, they chose New Year's gifts for the children. But Michael went alone to greet the little ones. Daddy came, Daddy came. The children screamed when Michael, covered with frost, piled into his mother's apartment. Grandma Miranda, the mother of his late wife, was also there. So these are gifts for grandmothers. A warm robe and soft slippers for Grandma Miranda. And a new kettle with a whistle for Grandma Miranda. And now for the little ones, who behaved badly, who pulled the cat's tail again and scattered corn sticks on the carpet. Come on now, boyishly, loudly and cheerfully, asked the father. Little Evelyn put her head down and cried, I will not do it anymore. I am a good one. The little girl excused herself to the general laughter, handing out gifts, which the children immediately engaged in. Michael invited his mother and mother-in-law over for a private chat. I have news for you, broads. I understand that at first glance it will seem hard, unpleasant to you. I also know that you are reasonable people and can understand me. Molly, know for over 3 years I have been faithful all these years, and the memory I will keep for the rest of my life. But it's hard for me to raise children. Even with your help, it is hard. Children should have both parents. Someone has to replace their mother. I found a wonderful woman, and I'm sure she'll be up to the task. If I wasn't sure of that, I wouldn't be talking to you about it. I would now about it. You understand, don't judge. In a trembling voice, Michael ended the conversation and left for the children's room. The grandmothers still sat in the kitchen for a long time, crying, drinking tea, talking. Nothing could be done. Vanessa, that's life. I knew from the beginning he would find another woman someday and be happy with her and the kids. He deserved it. But why do I feel so bad about it? The woman was crying. Why was she stirring the tea with her spoon? Let the situation go. Grandchildren will always be yours. We live next door. Be happy for Michael. He's been a stranger for 3 years. He goes to the clinic with the kids, then to kindergarten, then to school. And he also works in a responsible position. How does he manage it all? Thought Grandma Miranda, Michael's mother, and the winter vacations were over. And the children were back home. Wow, we have new curtains, and our room is so tidy. We have a fairy living in our room. Liam, the most inquisitive of the children, inquired. Yes, children. Now a fairy named Adriana will live with us, said the father dreamily. A beautiful woman in a dress came out of the bedroom. You are the fairy. And where is your magic wand? Liam asked again. William, Evelyn stood with her hands together and watched. The children Adriana will come to live with us. She will try very hard to replace Mom, though I guess Mom cannot be replaced. She will love you, and she will be a true friend to you. Don't hurt her. The children looked at each other, and little Evelyn came up to the woman and pressed her face into the hem of her fine dress, the color of the sky on a sunny day. Mama, the little girl said quietly. Adriana's tears flowed. She remembered her mother, whom she had not seen for about 15 years. So who hasn't brushed her teeth again? William, did you know that someone who doesn't brush their teeth gets the dreaded evil tooth decay? No, it's not the evil wizard or the housekeeper. William, do you know who it is and why you and Daddy went to the dentist last week? No, I'll tell Daddy. And if you don't listen to me again, you'll sleep with me cheerfully and carefree, joked Ma Adriana. With her adopted children, William would run around the rooms, and the girl would run after him with a toothbrush in her hand. Then these morning races turned into general fun and complete disobedience. The children squealed, laughed, rode Adriana on horseback, tugged at the hem of her long robe, and just goofed around. Woken up by the children's laughter, Dad looked stern and said, in a gruff voice, whoever didn't like brushing his teeth would go to live in Cuba. All the kids wanted to go to Cuba and didn't want to go to kindergarten and school. Then Dad would take William and Liam to Evelyn's kindergarten class, Adriana to the cafe, and he'd go put out the fires and make the arrangements. Grandmothers were on hand. Grandma Vanessa would pick up the boys from school and take them to lunch. And Grandma Miranda would pick up Evelyn from daycare in the evening and reunite the children in one of the apartments. Then Dad and Mom would come and pick everyone up. Such a busy life seemed to Adriana the most faithful. The most thoughtful and happy weeks flew by unnoticed on weekends, if they all coincided. The whole merry family would go for a walk in the park. I can't believe my happiness. Michael often liked to repeat himself. When the happy, tired children fell asleep, and he and Adriana were left alone. I don't know if everything in this life is destined or not, but you are the one appointed by fate, and no one else. I'm so happy that sometimes I'm afraid that such happiness is not given to a man for nothing. He must pay for it. Adriana remembered that night's conversation every night when she put the children to bed, and now lay down alone on the big matrimonial bed and cried almost until morning. Tragedy struck just before the weekend at the beginning of the new school year. Evelyn was in 1st grade that year, and the boys were in 5th grade. And after the first week of school, they were all promised an unforgettable weekend, especially since September was warm and sunny. On Friday, when the kids came home from school, they saw their mother Adriana stacking their clothes, tennis rackets, and fishing rods in their dad's big backpack. And in the refrigerator, camping and canned goods are stacked in containers of varying sizes. Adriana's mom, "We're going on an overnight fishing trip," suggested the savvy Liam, while William and Evelyn fought over the ball, which Adriana had not yet managed to stuff into one of the gym bags. "We're going somewhere. Daddy keeps the itinerary a secret, so don't ask me anything. I'm supposed to pack, so I'm packing. So everybody go wash your hands, and we'll have supper. We'll go to bed early tonight because we have to get up early. You know how fussy and strict Daddy is." Smiling and genuinely excited about the weekend together, Adriana shared her plans. An alarming phone call on a landline sounded closer to 10 o'clock when the children were already asleep. Adriana tried to call her husband, worried that he wasn't home yet. No, it had happened occasionally before. There had been an emergency call for a fire that hadn't been put out for a long time, or an inspection that needed to be thoroughly prepared for. Once Michael got drunk on the occasion of a birthday party at a coworker's third daughter's house. But on such occasions, he warned that he would be late by calling or texting, scouring his phone. There were no missed calls or texts Adriana could find. "Tell me, who am I talking to?" asked the man on the other end of the line. "I'm Adriana." "What's wrong? Who am I talking to? Don't be silent." Adriana got hysterical, and the voice on the phone said some incomprehensible, empty phrases like in the line of duty. "A brave fireman and a wonderful man and family man." Then she fainted, and the voice on the phone kept spouting platitudes about honor duty and eternal memory. Michael was about to get in his car to drive home when a disheveled Nancy ran out of the unit building and, in the voice of a fire siren, shouted that the building of the equestrian school where the children engaged in equestrian sports was on fire. The fire started in the stable. While the horses were being let out, the fire spread to the feed storage and locker rooms. The fire happened at the very beginning of training, when children from 5 years old to adulthood were changing clothes and could not see that the stables were on fire. There were no windows in the locker rooms, so when did they smell the fumes? All the approaches to the locker rooms were covered by a smoke screen. It was impossible to approach them without equipment. When the first fire brigades arrived, the building where the children were kept was almost completely engulfed in flames. The janitor was running with buckets, and 2 instructors, wrapped in wet clothes, were trying to get through the smoke and fire to evacuate the children. But it was no longer possible to get through the main entrance. Back I said, "Don't complicate our work," and I ordered Michael to the instructors and the supervisor. The children's locker room wing was smoking, though, but the fire had not engulfed it completely. Technical exits and corridor windows were visible. While one squad led the horses out of the stables, Michael's squad began to make their way down the long corridor to the locker rooms. The children were screaming and crying. The younger ones tried to open the locker room door, but the older ones wouldn't let them. They wet their clothes with water and covered their and the kids' breathing organs. They were taught this at the safety class by the old quartermaster. 4 fire brigades and an old fire truck from the timber yard, 1 kilometer from the horse barn, put out the fire. The children were taken out one by one. Many of them needed medical help. The children had swallowed a lot of smoke. Where were Wendy and David? Suddenly, one of the instructors perturbed when no more children were left in the changing rooms and the first ambulances began to arrive. "Who was that? Weren't all the kids evacuated?" asked the head of the guard. He was filled with animal fear for the children. "That sweet couple, always wandering around. They're still in their junior year. They're 6 years old. They're probably in the basement again. They got some kind of cavalry headquarters down there. Kids, what can you take from them?" Through the sound of water in their sleeves, the instructor shouted, "Where's the entrance to the cellar? Show me." Not to waste time explaining, ordered Michael to the inspector. "Let's go. It's in the left wing. The naughty ones are always looking for them," shared his fears and worries the instructor. The left wing was almost extinguished and only small flares could be seen in places, but the roof overhung them in one big dome, ready to collapse at any moment. "Guys, there could be kids in here too. God, I wish they were alive. You guys cover me on the way out, and I'll try to make my way down." Calling to his coworkers, Michael stepped through the still sturdy metal door. He was gone for 5 minutes. During this time, the instructors, the superintendent, and all the firefighters prayed, even those who didn't believe in God or the devil. "Take over," shouted Michael, still climbing the steep iron stairs of the basement, carrying the 2 babies at once, hugging them with both arms, and placing their heads on his partner's shoulders as he handed the barely living children over. The firefighters rushed downstairs again. They were there playing with the kitten. and he slipped out of my sinus. At the last moment, the smoldering roof collapsed with such a roar that I thought a shell had exploded or an anti-tank mine had gone off because of the terrible noise and smoke screens. The walls of the whole left wing also collapsed like a house of cards. Only the heavy iron jam and the open doors to the cellar had survived. It was clear at once that the man was buried and could not have survived under the rubble, no matter how 3 times a hero he might have been. But nevertheless, almost all the fire brigades were immediately thrown into the rubble removal operations. Michael was found almost immediately. He was still alive and clutching a small ginger kitten. Taking one last look from the tarpaulin spread on the ground into the darkening sunset sky, Michael exhaled and stopped giving signs of life. And so they lay there. The valiant soldier and firefighter who had sacrificed himself more than once to save other people's lives, and the little red-haired kitten who had become the indirect cause of the death of her funeral savior. Adriana barely remembered. She fell into some dark abyss of disbelief and rejection of reality. Only sometimes, on her way back, would she ask her mother Michael how the children were doing. And then she fell back into a deep pit of non-existence. The children were brought together by their shelter mother, Adriana Betty. The boys knew about the tragedy, but held on as best they could. Not to upset their little sister, who, playing dolls, kept asking William and Liam, "Where are Mom and Dad? Why did they give them to someone else's aunt? Why didn't they go fishing that weekend?" For the first 6 months after the tragic events, Adriana feared only one thing: that the children might be taken from her. She clung to them like some kind of straw that still keeps her afloat and connects her to that very happy life of hers. Michael's mother was completely blinded by the shock and was in the full care of Grandma Miranda's former matchmaker and good old neighbor. Adriana and the children spent every weekend at their house, where her husband's gruff and cheerful voice could no longer be heard, where his toothbrush no longer stood in the glass, and where no razors were scattered on the shelf in the bathroom, and other supplies were impossible to find. By the end of February, Grandma Vanessa was gone too. She left quietly the night before, asking Baba Miranda to come to her in the morning to take her blood pressure. Baba Miranda did not get through and unlocked the door with her key and went straight into the bedroom. Her neighbor's face was calm and peaceful. She looked as if she had gone away in her sleep, and before she left she saw her son. "What an easy death. I would be so thoughtful," said Baba Miranda, rubbing spoons after the wake. "But I cannot. I have children. I promised Michael I would never betray them if anything happened to him." Strange. Why did he start that strange conversation? He said, "Don't betray our children. If for some reason I can't be there for you." I laughed at the time, flicking his nose. A week later, he was gone. Adriana cried, and little Evelyn, coming up to her, suddenly rested her face on her stomach, grabbing her hips, saying, "You are not a traitor. You are our mother." Today, Adriana has a tough conversation with Lisa, the owner of the cafe. Making ends meet is getting harder and harder. There isn't enough time to run the cafe at full capacity. 3 students and sports sections. William has a music school. Liam has a music school. Always sick girl with a cold. My head is spinning. Constantly asking for time off from work is embarrassing. At least Lisa is always in her position. No, she needs to find a job closer to home and school, or find a nanny to pick up the kids from school and do their homework with them. You can't afford a nanny on a waitress salary. All the pension assigned to the children on the loss of their father. It goes, but for the children's schoolwork and utilities. You either have to save money on food or change jobs. The girl wanted to get into swimming. They say it helps a lot with colds and develops the lungs. We have to make a change. You can't rely on people's goodwill and always ask for help. Baba Miranda has given up a lot and can't take care of her grandchildren. She needs help herself, thought Adriana. On the way to school, the children were talking and joking with each other, and Adriana was lost in her own thoughts. "Lisa, I'm sorry. You've done so much for me. I will be in your eternal debt." But I can't do this anymore. I feel uncomfortable. Every time I take off work to pick up the kids from school, or when I take sick leave for another girl's illness, and finances are tight. I want to find another job so I can be with my children more and be more financially profitable by specialty. I graduated from a college of finance and economics. If my salary allows, I can hire a nanny at least for a few hours a day. You're very nice, and I'll miss you. But you have to understand, I can't leave the kids. I promised Michael, and I can't live without them. Come on, no hard feelings. I understand. I can't pay you more. How can I explain it to the others? But I'm in your position. And in general, it's great that Michael made you study then, even at night, even after work. But you graduated and got an excellent diploma. To be honest, I wasn't sure you could do it. And you got straight A's too. Good for you. You know what? While you're looking for another job, work through lunch and keep all the tips for yourself just as your full salary comes in. And if you find something suitable, I'll let you go without working. I can run around the gym myself. I can still run, Lisa said with a smile. And in Adriana's soul was a little brighter. The search for work came to a standstill. A woman without higher education, without work experience, and with 3 children. No one wanted to hire her. Adriana called around and bypassed so many firms and organizations that she was completely confused. Every day brought new disappointments and failures. After almost a month in television job ads, Adriana saw an interesting phone number, which consisted of only 5s. Wow, what a lucky number. Maybe I'll get lucky here. The woman thought and dialed the number. A nice man's voice answered almost immediately. Yes, I need a part-time accountant. We already have an accountant, an old, experienced, but it's hard for him to run around the tax office and banks. So to help her and take a person familiar with finances, our firm has been in the market for 10 years. Although we are a small but stable company, if you have a bright head and strong legs, we will be happy to accept you into our team. In the same breath, the man blurted out and set a date and time for the interview. Adriana was uneasy. She assumed that when she found out about the children, she would not be hired again, and it would be another disappointment. Come on in, the older woman said with a smile, apparently acting as a secretary in a large and bright office. Located on the 2nd floor of a tall building made of glass and concrete, under a sign of the Human Resources Department sat a young man who, judging by his voice, and communicated with Adriana on the phone. Looking through her documents and smiling enigmatically, he said, I want to warn you right away. We have been looking for a person for this position for several months. If you are sensitive and touchy, I would say you'd better not work here. We are already used to it and do not react to our director. The newcomers run like crazy. They don't even work for a month, even though the salary is much higher than in other firms. So you think about it. Is it worth it? I agree. I don't even have a choice, especially part-time. My kids have a great paycheck, and with my psyche, I'll manage somehow. She's a fighter. Adriana tried to make a joke. You're a big help. If you run for at least a couple of months, Jenna, our accountant, is in her 60s. It's hard for her to run around different financial institutions, although with all her other duties, she is doing fine. And she is used to the director. Our secretary is seen in the hall, also under 60. Nerves here are as strong as steel from the beginning of the firm's foundation. I live on sedatives, and I have nowhere to go. I have 5 girls, a wife, and 4 daughters, and we don't get paid. You know how much to drink and women, shared his aspirations Jacob, the head of human resources. And I have 3 children, and I'm a widow. We'll stick together. The director can't swallow 2 of us at once. Sadly, joked Adriana and began to apply for a new job. The chief accountant of the firm, Jenna, was a strict but fair woman, and seeing the excellent performance and zeal for work in his ward, she changed her anger for mercy and began to teach her everything she knew. You, my dear, are not stupid at all, though you have no higher education. If you work hard, you can be in my place in 5 years. With a bit of irony, but quite affirmatively, explained the accountant. They won't put me in your place. I have to finish university and this job suits me, and the children are taken care of, and enough time off. Only I'm so afraid of your director. I was scared of your head of HR. Is he really such a creepy guy? In fact, where is he? I've been working here for 2 weeks and never met them. With some anxiety, Adriana asked, "Is it like spring or fall in the hospital?" Old wounds begin to wind the former warrior. He has 2 bullet holes and a shrapnel in his spine. He needs an operation, but he's still hesitant to do it. That's why he's always angry. He's sick all the time, and he makes young ladies go crazy. I've noticed we have a staff of people under 40. Only Jacob from Human Resources, but he's not a woman. I don't know much myself, but my predecessor told me his wife left him when he was in the hospital the first time. Came home, and she was gone. She just left a note that she was too young to put up with an invalid husband all her life. And they didn't have children. She thought it was because of him. That's when he got furious and got mad at the whole female race. Well, you came and went. You won't run into him at work. Maybe you do not get under the hot hand. Shared the cause of the bad character of the director Jenna and Emily. Call me a new accountant. Urgently ordered Ethan to his secretary strictly. So no, her in the morning I went to the bank. Then to the auditors for the results of the audit. Then to the tax and then back to the bank. You can only catch her early in the morning, replied the older woman, surely knowing that she has already caused uncontrollable wrath of his superiors. So call her and tell her that I am waiting for her in the afternoon. In my office I will certainly write with a bit of sarcasm, but quite obligingly promised Emily. And Emily sat down again to play solitaire. I won't be able to make it today. I have to pick up the kids from school in half an hour, and then feed them at the music room and run to the pool. I took a part-time job on purpose so I'd have some free time. Apologized to Ethan and explained the situation to him. Adriana tried to explain herself. The next morning was gloomy, and not just because of the rain. The smell of a thunderstorm wafted through the office, and the reason for that thunderstorm was Adriana, who dared to disobey her boss. Wipe off the lipstick. He can't stand all those tiny ladies, Adriana advised Emily, and slipped a damp napkin into her hand. Well, I'm off, Adriana replied, wiping off the colorless lip gloss on her lips as she went. A large man sat at his desk, removing his gaze to a pile of documents and bills. Already from a distance, it was evident that he was displeased and his forehead showed deep wrinkles, a sure sign of indignation. Good morning. You were called almost inaudibly, the woman asked. Yesterday rudely, and without lifting his eyes from the papers, the man answered. What did you summon yesterday? But you are so busy that you could not find 10 minutes in your busy schedule to honor the man who pays you a very good salary, continued his angry speech the stern boss. Adriana was silent. She wanted to cry right now, to slam the door loudly or throw a letter of resignation in his face, say all the things she and his whole entourage thought about him. But in a week I have to pay for the pool, buy lime, new sneakers, acoustics, plasticine, and a new sketchbook. And the commute went up, and the last shoe washed, and the bathroom faucet leaked. And it goes on and on and on. Sorry, Emily didn't get through to me yesterday. My phone is old, and without a charge every 3 to 4 hours it just shuts down. And I just spent 2 hours at the bank, and the same time at the tax office. I did not think that I could be called in the afternoon, when my working hours were already over. Trying to justify the secretary, Adriana. You're a brain-dead man without a charge. And I set the working day here. And from now on, so the phones don't go dead. And I do not care about their age. You want to work here. Do what I tell you to do. The man was uncontrollable in his anger. His slightly dark hair turned damp, either from the exertion or from the fact that the office was stuffy. I understood. It won't happen again. I assure you, with a pinched sense of pride, the woman replied. Come over here and explain to me the results of the audit. This is the part I don't quite understand. The director asked more calmly and poked his index finger at a point he didn't understand. In the process of explaining, when, having calmed down, the director turned over the sheets with graphs and tables, Adriana saw a scar on the director's wrist. It was painfully familiar and familiar. "Where did you get that?" "Not a woman's thing," abruptly Adriana asked, and even paled in surprise. "What business is it of yours? I have dozens of scars and marks from bullets and shrapnel on my body. I'll show you everything." Adriana was hypnotized. Without a trace of fear, she grabbed the headmaster's arm and turned his wrist toward her, "Like my Michael." "Exactly," as if in a kind of ecstasy, Adriana uttered, "and froze your Michael." "Who is he to you?" "Already interested?" asked the boss and rubbed the place of the scar. "My husband. He is no longer there. Died in the fire," Adriana answered, and huge tears gushed from both eyes at once. "How did he die?" "No, he can't be. I was so stupid, I wanted to find him when I arrived. After all, I knew that he lived here, but he was hospitalized. Then my wife left, and I drank a lot. Then I was putting the firm back on its feet. I kept putting it off, thinking I'd get rich and come to Michael with presents. Well, life. What a fool you are," cursed himself boss, not even noticing how Adriana quietly left the office and hid behind the bathroom door, so no one saw her tears. The weeks went by. Adriana never saw her abuser again. She came to work early in the morning, picked up a bag of papers, and went off to run errands for the accountant. The first anniversary of Michael's death was approaching. On that day, Adriana took the day off and in the morning, having bought flowers, went to the cemetery. Even from afar, she noticed a tall, sturdy male figure in a dark cloak standing in the fence. She slowed down, not from fear, but from surprise. It was Ethan, her evil boss, and her husband's coworker. "Good morning. You're early." "I wanted to be alone with him until this fellow fireman arrived," the woman said a little rudely and placed flowers on the grave next to a bouquet of bright red roses. "I was guided by exactly the same desire." "Well, excuse me, I won't disturb you." With these words, Ethan said goodbye to Adriana and walked briskly. He walked down the long cemetery alley toward the exit. Adriana put both bouquets in vases, poured water into them from a bottle hidden behind the cross, adjusted the garland of flowers on the fence, and the wreath of artificial greenery on the cross. She did not take the children to the cemetery, reasoning that children should remember their father alive. Then the tears came. Tears welled up in her eyes. She did not remember how long she had stood. Like that, all alone on an early autumn morning. She thought of talking to her husband, blaming him for not keeping his promise to always be there for her, leaning her head against the photo of him on the cross. "I will go, my most beloved. Your friends will come over, remembering by dinner time. In a couple of years they'll forget too. I can't. I have you right here." And she raked her blouse into a clump on her chest with her fingers. Then she walked slowly down the leaf-strewn alley. She opened the creaking gate and threw the old flowers she had picked into the trash can. She walked to the bus stop. Adriana. She heard the voice of her boss behind her. "Let me take you. I decided to skip work today too." The woman got into an expensive SUV. She was almost exhausted, and the wistful look could melt the coldest heart. "These aren't your children. Or rather, they are Michael's children. Don't answer that. I already know everything. A long time ago, during the fighting in Chechnya, we made a vow to each other that if one of us died, the other would take care of his loved ones. We took this oath on blood, like two silly teenagers, cutting our hands. It seemed like such a serious ritual at the time. And then, somehow, everything calmed down. Anyway, my heart didn't snap when he was dying. I don't know if he did when I was sick. It doesn't matter now. All that matters is that I owe it to him to keep my promise on the blood. And I'm sorry about the other day. I'm not such a rude fool at all, I guess, or a lunatic. Okay, that's lyrical. My point is this. Getting married with 3 little kids is borderline fantastic. I mean, what kind of a dickhead would get married? Or the last fool? Don't think I'm talking out of some kind of grudge against the female sex. I'm just being honest with everybody. I don't rule out the possibility of falling in love with you. You're a fine-looking lady. But how do you know for sure that you are loved, not used, and not used in any way? That's why I'm offering you my hand and heart. You don't have to love me. What I can guarantee is that you will all be under my protection and full prosperity. Think about it. You're with the kids all day. I provide for you. Everybody's happy. We're here. You can come in. Some of the men from the service will be here soon to pay their respects. I'll introduce you. No, I talked to Michael there at the cemetery, so I remembered. What's on your mind? For a month, Ethan went away. Adriana didn't quite understand his impulse. How could one suggest such a thing only for the sake of a friend's memory? What about the love, the devotion, the tenderness of the relationship, living to provide for yourself and your children? Sounds kind of corny. How do you sell yourself short? And on the other hand, she promised her husband she would take care of his children, and so far there's no way she can cope. Adriana's life was slowly getting better. The children listened to her and were not capricious, as often happens at their age. They understood that the only one who needed Adriana besides their mother was Grandma Miranda, but she had given up completely. The death of her son-in-law had finally knocked her down. The angry boss no longer bothered Adriana, and that was enough for her to feel quite comfortable at work. A month after the anniversary of Michael's death, on a day off, when the whole merry family returned from a walk in the autumn park, the doorbell rang. "Who's there?" Perplexed, Adriana asked, for she was not expecting guests, and she did not tolerate strangers in her house. It was Ethan who answered in a gruff male voice from behind the door. "I wasn't expecting you at all. We had just come from a walk." Adriana had excused herself by opening the front door. "That's all right. Sorry for the short notice. I was just passing by and thought I'd stop by and meet the children. And to remind you that a month has passed and I am waiting for your answer." Ethan's tone was cold and mundane as he handed Adriana a bouquet of bright yellow roses and a box of chocolates of a well-known brand. As if it was not a proposal of marriage at all, but a report on the results of work. "Come on, kids, they're in the bathtub washing up." After the walk, they were so mobile, laying in the fallen leaves, feeding squirrels from the hands, collecting leaves for the herbarium. They got so dirty that they could take a shower in their clothes. Adriana shared her little worries, inviting her guests to come into the living room and running around the house in search of a decent face. Ethan sat down on the couch and looked around. "How do you live in such tight quarters?" "There is no room for 3 children?" asked the guest. He glanced down the hall and out the doors of the 2 other tiny rooms that were open. "We have enough. The girl and I sleep over there in that cozy room with the balcony. The boys are in the bigger room, and in the hall they play and watch cartoons. The kitchen, of course, is not big enough for 4 people, but as they say, in tight quarters, but no offense." It was as if Adriana was making excuses. At this time, the children ran out of the bathroom laughing and shouting, as if stunned to see a stranger in their house. "Hello." The first to say hello was the perky, polite Liam, and he held out his baby hand to the stranger. "Well, hello, fighter." "Hello to you, kids," Ethan said more gently and kindly, holding out his hand to William. And then Evelyn. "My name is Uncle Ethan. I am a friend of my father's and a soldier in the army. I would very much like to be friends with you. So tomorrow, Sunday, I'm inviting you all out of town. I have a big house there and a great garden where you can frolic and play. How much would you like? I hope Adriana's mom won't mind. If everyone is in favor, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Ethan said casually and even playfully, getting up from the couch and heading for the exit. Hurrah! How the children shouted, jumping and clapping their hands. Thank you. We hardly ever go out, much less out of town. Good thing the park is close to home. That's where we go on weekends. I don't drive, and we had to sell ours. What's there to idle? And we needed the money too. And without a car with this cheerful company, it's hard to go somewhere. I'm happy to take you up on your offer, Adriana said shyly. Tomorrow at 9, and without tardiness, I won't wait more than 5 minutes, Ethan reminded me loudly. Departure time, and walked out the door. Sunday afternoon flew by unnoticed and cheerfully. Ethan's house was spacious, but not cozy. It felt like a bachelor's den with a woman's hand in the form of representatives from the cleaning company. The place was definitely cleaned once or twice a week. The garden, on the other hand, was monstrously large with several apple trees and pear trees. Some of the apple trees still had late fall apples hanging on them. And in the flower beds, the last of the tartest flowers were blooming brightly. The colored paving stone paths were wide, and the kids raced along them on bicycles and scooters. Then Ethan played soccer with them, constructing goals out of the materials at hand, and inviting the kids from the neighboring houses to have more fun. Uncle Ethan, can we come over sometimes? You have so much fun and lots of room to play, the girl asked Evelyn at lunch. This is indecent, sternly interrupted her Adriana. Well, Mom supported Liam and William with a sad and pitying look, measuring the owner of the dwelling. No, absolutely not. No weekends at my house. I insist on moving in with me completely and unconditionally for good, scaring the kids a little with the ultimatum form of the proposal. Ethan said, and smiling, he looked in Adriana's direction. What do you mean for good? Just for good, for good. Can Adriana's mom move in with us? We can't do it without her, shyly said the girl. Mom, Adriana, let's move in, shouted each other Liam and William while drinking tea and cake from big glasses with pictures of scenes from Harry Potter. What do you say, Mama Adriana? The kids are in favor. I'm 2 hands in favor. I'm bored and scared here alone. Ethan played along with the kids, calculating that this approach to an important issue would leave Adriana no choice. Well, I don't know. It's so quick. I'm not ready to answer. Trying to slow down the speed of the decision, Adriana replied. That's my reasoning. 4 votes in favor versus 1 doubting. Moving in next weekend, and I'll just get your rooms ready. Ethan suggested his plan with a wink at the children. We'll start packing today. We'll start packing today, the children shouted excitedly. Stop. And what about school, the pool, training? Adriana tried to say something, but the noise and commotion drowned out her words, and they were left hanging in the air, unheard. Unpacking after Sunday's visit out of town and putting the children to bed, Adriana decided to call Ethan and express her indignation over the move. No one picked up the phone for a long time, and Adriana's resolve in the matter even lost a bit of its force. Around 10 p.m., Ethan called back himself. Adriana, I'm sorry I didn't answer the phone. I have a therapeutic massage on Sundays. My back is killing me. But today, after outdoor activities, it got much better. Ethan excused himself for not answering the phone. Sorry, I didn't know. I'm about to move. Ethan is unrealistic. Right now, we have school and training. Lots of things keeping us in town. I can't turn everything upside down at the beginning of the school year. These are children. They already have a difficult fate, and you have to be more delicate with them. I tried to explain the situation to Adriana. I received a short and uncompromising reply. Everything will remain as it is, and the schools and other components. You and the children will have a car and driver at your disposal, and the matter is closed. On Friday evening, a car will come and pick up the necessary items, clothing, school supplies, toys. There is no need to bring any equipment or furniture. I take care of everything. By the way, you have been working for the last week. All the care for the children and the house will fall on your shoulders. And think again about my offer to start a family. I hope that moving in and getting to know each other better will encourage you to make the right decision. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's late and I have to rest. Tomorrow is a busy day and lots of unresolved tasks. I'm used to living on a schedule. a little abruptly cut Adriana off Ethan's objections, and wishing him good night, he passed out. The boor. Who does he think he is? What right does he have to dispose of other people's lives? Man. Quietly, almost to herself, scolded Adriana, the unyielding temper of a stern boss. As much as Adriana was indignant at such a quick move, but looking at how excited the children are about packing and the prospect of living out of town in a huge house with a garden calmed down a bit, and all week packed in large boxes. At 7 o'clock on Friday evening, a truck and 2 fast-talking men movers drove up to the house. In half an hour, they loaded boxes of stuff into the van. Ethan called at lunchtime to say he would pick up the family around 8 p.m. Uncle Ethan, who will Adriana's mother be to you now? Who are we to you? Can we get a dog and a cat? Because Adriana's mom wouldn't let us. She said there wasn't enough space and no time for them. The children fell asleep with questions while Ethan drove them to their new place of residence. That's up to Adriana's mom. She doesn't want to marry me. Maybe you could say I don't have a wife and kids, but I want to so bad it makes my teeth cramp up. Ethan was joking, who, oddly enough, was in great spirits and was always cracking jokes and poking Adriana with his jokes. Mother Adriana, why don't you want to marry Uncle Ethan? He's a good one. Daddy wouldn't have minded. Suddenly, the clever Liam asked. Adriana was covered with sweat and blushed at the unexpected question. I love your daddy, and I don't want another husband yet, Adriana answered dryly. And they drove on in silence for the rest of the way. The first days in Adriana's new home were not easy. She had her own room, but it was nowhere near the children's bedrooms. But the children were happy to have their own corner and not have to share it with anyone. Evelyn, however, sometimes asked Adriana to lie down with her before she went to bed and tell her a story or a funny story. The boys adored Uncle Ethan and followed him around. As soon as he came home, Adriana realized that children needed a father, especially boys. Ethan really became their role model and unquestionable authority. In the evenings, he checked on their lessons like a kind but demanding father, and in the mornings, he demanded that the children be as focused as he was. Adriana left her job to devote herself entirely to her children. To be completely honest, she liked living at Ethan's house, feeling like the mistress of that big, not exactly comfortable house. Cooking, picking up and walking the kids in the morning and picking them up after school. Being able to go to parent-teacher conferences and practices everywhere. Participate in the children's lives hourly, not on an hourly basis. One evening when the first snow fell and the garden seemed like a fairy tale scene through the windows, Adriana asked Ethan for permission to change the interior of the house to make the dwelling more comfortable. It is your home too, so do what you want. Just don't touch my bedroom and study. It should only be my order. I'm so used to it, Ethan replied and promised to send a good interior designer. Adriana was so engrossed in furnishing the house that she sometimes forgot to sleep. And there they were, 100 times a day discussing with the designer the color of the walls, curtains, ceilings, and all the little things that bring warmth and comfort into the home. The kids were excited about the changes too. Only Ethan pretended that he didn't care whether the walls in the living room were green or lilac, or whether there was a picture of a woman in a hat hanging over the fireplace or a knight in armor. One day, Ethan arrived home very late and a little on edge. He refused dinner and, without saying good night to the children, retired to his study. Adriana did not question the reasons for his preoccupied look and just sat down to watch a movie in the hall near the kitchen on the big leather couch. At about 11 p.m., Ethan came downstairs and asked me to make him coffee and sandwiches. Is something wrong? Adriana asked. She sliced the ham and cheese. No, everything is the same as before. I'm tired of waiting for an answer, and I'm tired of living in the same house with a woman who thinks she is such a pain in the ass, who honors the memory of her dead husband, and doesn't try to build a relationship with another man who has done everything for her and the children. Yes, I know I'm not perfect, but at least I'm trying to change myself. Do you think this is easy for me? I sincerely want to be your support. and not just for the memory of a friend. I want to be wanted, after all, to be welcomed with sincere joy not only by my children, but also by a woman who would share my worries, victories, and defeats with me to bed. Finally, I don't want to be looked upon as someone who provides a cozy and well-off life. I waited. I didn't rush. I was extremely polite and courteous. I didn't insult your dignity with a single word or hint. I love children with all my heart. So why haven't I earned your favor yet? What's wrong with me? Ethan almost growled, spilling out in revelations. Adriana was confused and did not know what to answer. She knew that it was silly to live with a man in his house and know that nothing would follow, especially since he had reminded her several times that she had not responded to his proposal, but had not turned him down either. From her confusion and surprise, Adriana even cried, quietly, almost inaudible, but no tears or tantrums. I can't stand it. Angry Ethan and even poured himself a glass of cognac from the bar. You've never once said you love me. You say it every day to the children, and never to me. If you think a woman is all about prosperity and comfort and happy children, you're wrong. Why did you bring us here if you knew you wouldn't love me? Why all this? I didn't want to go. Why did you get the children on your side and get them used to the good life? Because you wanted to win their mother's cold heart, so that they would learn to see me as a friend and, in the long run, as a father. What had I done wrong? Ethan almost shouted, pouring cognac into a square glass. Let's calm down and talk about it tomorrow. Gathering herself into a fist, Adriana offered and hid behind the doors of her bedroom. In the morning, Ethan behaved calmly, as if the night's conversation had never happened. He played with the children and drew funny faces on bread, with jam and boiled condensed milk. He ate with them in a race. Adriana smiled as she watched this merry fidgeting. So today I'll get home early from work, and we'll all go together to build a snowslide. Everyone, I'll buy a sled, and tomorrow we'll go sledding with the guys with gusto, Ethan said, and popping a piece of bread and jam into his mouth, ran out into the street. Mom, why is Uncle Ethan so good? Don't you want to marry him? Evelyn asked, wiping the jam-stained lips with a napkin. Men get married, they get married, corrected his sister by clever Liam. Mom still loves Daddy, and we love Daddy very much too. And we love Uncle Ethan too. Can't we do that? Clarified the romantic and quiet William. Can we? I guess. I love Uncle Ethan as a friend who will take care of us. Thoughtfully, Adriana replied, and began to get the children ready for school. In the evening, everyone built a slide together and filled it with water from a hose. The night was frosty, and by morning the slide had frozen solid. The next evening, the whole cheerful family was riding on the built attraction, and we ate dinner at the beginning of 9. The children fell asleep at the table, and Ethan carefully carried them to their bedrooms like a priceless cargo. Then he helped Adriana clear the dishes and sat next to them, watching some stupid show. I need to tell you something, Ethan said in an almost whisper, and pulled a small velvet box out of his pants pocket. Be my wife. I promise to love and respect you. I promise to take care of you and the children. Adriana went into a stupor and just remained silent, looking at the wedding ring inside the box. Promise me that you will never leave me. Promise me you'll swear that everyone I've ever loved has left me. My father, my mother, my husband. I'm so tired of losing that I'm afraid to love anyone else. Through tears, Adriana answered, and fell on the chest of her companion. I cannot promise you that, but I won't leave you willingly. I promise you that. With a slightly sad smile, Ethan said, and he hugged Adriana. They spent that night together, giving in to their feelings and their desire to possess each other. Ethan's gentle kisses and hugs revived Adriana's desire to love and be loved. It's morning. We've hardly slept, Ethan whispered, wrapping his bride's curly curls around his finger. I'm so relaxed, I'm afraid to get up. I think I'm going to fall, Adriana said, smiling. We're going to take the children to school, but we're not going anywhere. And we're going to lie in bed until lunchtime, Ethan said, and started getting dressed to wake up the kids. What about your job? You're a very strict boss who's never late and never misses work. The woman laughed, picking up her clothes on the floor. Do you know why I was so strict? It's because I didn't have a woman I loved. And now I'm going to start changing. I'm going to be soft, and you're all going to weave ropes out of me. Laughed her stern boss, slowly but surely changing into a good family man. The wedding was played in a small, cozy restaurant outside the city with few guests. How tired I was, Adriana told her husband when she and the children arrived from the celebration to their comfortable home. I will put the children to bed myself, and you take a bath and lie down, suggested the new husband, and went upstairs to fight with the undesirable boys and Evelyn. I could barely get them all to stop. They wouldn't go to bed, so I promised to take them to the water park tomorrow. Only then scattered to beds. So take out your bathing suit, wife, cheerfully said Ethan and hugged his wife. That's without me. In my position, it's not the best leisure time. You're on your own, mysteriously replied his wife. I don't understand. What are you saying? I'm saying that if a man and a woman love each other, it makes such situations happen. Yay, I'm going to be a father once again in the truest way possible. I thought I couldn't have children because of trauma. God, you just lifted me up to heaven. How I love you. How I love you all. Ethan almost screamed as he hugged his wife. Camille was born on a bright September morning. Weight 3,200. Height 52 centimeters. Both healthy, reported the nurse on the phone. And Ethan felt vulnerable for the first time. Tears of joy came to his eyes, and warmth spread throughout his body. He wanted to sing, laugh, and cuddle with every passerby. But the children and their children were waiting at home. Now there were 4. Let there be more. Let there be many more. And in the house, there was always laughter, noise, a little glove compartment, a pile of coffee, bottles. There's also a lot of happiness.